a lot of the change management is really transition management a lot of times.
But if you're a part of it, that helps you as well to adjust to that new change, and you get proud of it as well. I think that's what you had earlier on, right?
Oh yeah, you're invested in the change.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you are part of the solution, and you will also, at that point, those employees, they'll make sure their peers support it also.
Human, because you sometimes you do have to say it didn't work. let's reflect, do something else, and make it even better, right?
I really think it only happened once in 30 years. No.
Okay, good. You're passionate about the electronics industry, and what's so excited about it?
I think the creativity of engineers, what they have and what they can think of, and then figure out a way to make it happen. It's pretty exciting.
How do you know if you are a good leader?
If you have followers, then you are a leader. It's not a title. Are you able to execute change and make things better?
You're listening to Leadership in Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Sannah Vinding, and I'm a strategic leader with over 20 years of experience in B2B marketing, product development, and team empowerment. I'm passionate about sharing insight and tools to help professionals enhance their leadership skills. And in each episode, we discuss relevant topics for leaders like you, offering practical strategies and valuable insights. And all this is to help you refine your leadership style and drive success in your role. I interview professionals in the manufacturing industry, the distribution sector, and they all share their knowledge around leadership. So you want to stay and listen. So make sure to follow us. If it's on LinkedIn or if it's on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like, right? That's what everybody's saying. But be sure to check out the website, which is called leadershipinmanufacturing.com. In this episode, I sit down with Pete Shopp. He's the Senior Vice President of Business Operation at Mouser Electronics to discuss his extensive experience in the electronics industry and how it has shaped him into a more effective leader, both personally and professionally. Pete shares his insights at what excites him most about the industry and what the significance about continuous improvement in his leadership approach. So, enjoy this new episode. Let's get started. I have a new episode here. So I would like to introduce today's guest. It's Pete Shopp. He's the Senior Vice President of Business Operations at Mouser Electronics. And with over 29 years of experience at Mouser, Pete has been instrumental in driving operational excellence and innovation within the company. So welcome to the show, Pete.
Well, thanks for having me.
Nice. So the first question I always ask, because I have a passion. I hope everybody can see it, but I want to hear, your passion and, why do you love, I hope you love, what's your passion about the electronics industry and what's so excited about it?
I think there's so many things when you think about what engineers are creating these days, what they're designing, what they're making, and just the impact it has on society.
Yeah.
So I think in general, electronics are exciting. And because of that, because there is so much happening on it, it's a very exciting industry to be a part of just because, let's face it, there's a lot of industries that aren't doing so great. But the electronics industry consistently grows faster than the normal economy.
Yeah.
So it is very exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, and just look at you. I think if we look at our own home, right, how many electronics devices we have, or it's expanded, or just open that that little shelf or store where you have your components or your devices, right? It's like packed, right? It's like a little drawer of stuff.
Well, whether you are, start your coffee pot with your phone before you get out of bed, or your refrigerator tells you like what you need to go buy. It's pretty amazing. I think the creativity of engineers, what they have and what they can think of, and then figure out a way to make it happen. It's pretty exciting. It's hard to believe. And I'm on the operational side, so I don't have that kind of far-reaching creativity mind, but it just amazes me.
Yeah, but you're part of it, right? I think that's also important, that this industry, it's more than engineers, right? There's so many different roles and so many different teams and departments, and it all take that whole team to be successful, you have to work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to talk more about, because you just said with the operational, right? Because let's talk about continuous improvement and how has that shaped, your leadership approach at Mouser Electronics. I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, when you go all the way back to the basics of ISO and everything, but it's just so important to have that continuous improvement mindset. And you look back after a couple years and you think to yourself, wow, how do we go from point A to point B?
Yeah.
And really, it was like a whole bunch of points in between. And none of them are necessarily big, huge steps of improvement, but it's those little ones, all the time that make a huge, significant difference, over time. And it also makes it easier. You can just take, you just improve a little here, improve a little here. You take step, step, step.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you look back and have leaped ahead from where you were.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's good with the reflection as well, that in the moment you can feel that, oh my God, this is going to be a big project, right? Or it's a really complex task. But then if you cut it up, as you just said, in that smaller incrementals from A to B, on A, B, C, D, E, right? You can follow it out. Then when you look back, you're like, oh my God, it wasn't that difficult, right? But then you are on the other side. I'm sure you had that kind of aha moments.
Definitely. But I tell you, for me, some of the most rewarding moments is, I give a tour, like a supplier or a customer, give them a tour of our warehouse. And to me, I've grown up with it and we've had all these little improvements, but I'll talk to somebody who goes, I haven't been, I remember you gave me a tour like 3 or 4 years ago and they can't believe the changes. And I look back at it and, it doesn't seem like that big of a thing to me.
Yeah.
But to others who come step into it, it's like they're amazed at it. And it makes me feel proud.
Yeah.
Not that it was, my doing on all this, but it is exciting to be a part of what's happening at Mouser Electronics and the changes that we've experienced over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when somebody else look from the outside and in, right? And to say they're just amazed and what that big change has been, because you see it every day. So again, having somebody else, it makes you stop up, right? And saying, oh, let me just look at it. And I'm like, yeah, it actually has changed because you see it every day. It's like your painting or anything you have if you have anything decoration in your house, you walk by it every day, right? Maybe you really notice the day you said, okay, this is where it fits, right? But then you don't notice at a certain point. But if you rearrange it, suddenly you will be, oh my God, I forgot to look at this great image. Is it a family picture, right? Or is it a painting? It's funny how the everyday, you sometimes you forget to actually stop and look at it.
Very much so.
Yeah. So what about the whole team? I wanna find out, or if you can share some examples, right? How do you create a great team, and especially around the continuous improvement and having that, the yes head on to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it, or work together to go from A to B. What's some of your secrets?
Well, I think certainly with the leadership team, and we've had a very stable leadership team. Believe it or not, the person who is responsible for all the outbound orders at one time was my admin. Yes. No, that is not, I am not kidding. He was working in the warehouse and he was in our shipping department and he was going to the university and he felt like this would give him like more, he would get to see more of the business by being my admin and seeing some of the things that I do.
Yeah.
And basically he ended up getting his bachelor's degree in operations management. He was a supervisor and a manager, a director,
Yeah.
and now he is running all of our outbound operations. So he runs the shipping department, the order pulling department, um, and he's really been one of the key drivers lately of our automation.
Nice.
Um, he's actually been our most recent changes, and if you look at our new building, he has really been the main driver
Yeah.
of the new design of the new building. So things like that are exciting, but really the entire team, it's really a matter of, we're growing so fast. It's like, how do we make it a little bit better?
Yeah.
With just out and not just add people,
Yeah.
because we would be tripping over each other if we didn't make those improvements. And as far as how do we go about doing it, how do you go about making the improvements?
Yeah.
Truly one of my favorite books was Theory of Constraints, and the idea of, removing bottlenecks and trying to define the bottlenecks.
Yeah.
And for a lot of times it's like, oh, so, you say, how do you find a bottleneck? Well, a lot of times it's not that hard to figure it out, because you figure out, at the end of the night when you're rushing around to get all the last orders out, which area is behind, and you have to move a whole bunch of people to it.
Yeah.
And then you figure out, we got to figure out how to make this process better or change this area up, or,
Yeah.
and if you're like always, moving people to the one zone every night, you got to figure out that's something we got to fix.
Yeah.
And it really just kind of, it could be an order pulling thing, it could be a shipping thing, which part of the process is messed up. At the same time, a lot of times we'll, um, really, some of the people in our IT team will then we have a part of the team will do, they're a business process analyst and, industrial engineers. We'll come up with an idea, and then they'll actually they may agree, they may not agree, but they'll either do like a time study or, really do some observations and
Yeah.
evaluate it.
Yeah.
To decide, that would make this is definitely an area that's, we got to figure out how to make it better.
Yeah. That's good, right? So you actually take the time as well, or the team is taking the time to analyze and identify what is actually happening. Because just because you see something,
Right.
you need to know more, right? It's all the whys, right? Why is this
Yes.
happening and why is that happening? And then you just, you
Right.
go backwards.
And a lot of time too, it's, you ask the people who are working over there,
Yeah.
hey, what is your big challenge is, it's, and they know if they need help at night or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
what's the big challenge? What's making your job really hard? How can we make your job easier?
Yeah.
And usually they'll have some ideas.
Yeah.
And that's, but I think to have their manager, supervisor, even a director ask them, hey, how can we make your job easier? What would make it even a better place to work or whatever?
Yeah.
They become very open to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of the openness is they've seen changes result from previous encounters like that.
Yeah.
And you're actively making changes, and they get excited about that.
Yeah. And I also think like your human or your personal reaction, right? If there's any change coming, if you're part of making the new way or the new process or how it should run, or you actually had a seat at the table and somebody listened to your input, even though if it's not everything that's getting implemented, but if you're a part of it, that helps you as well to adjust to that new change, and you get proud of it as well. I think that's what you had earlier on, right?
Oh yeah, you're invested in the change.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are part of the solution, and you will also, at that point, those employees, they'll make sure their peers support it also.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all, I think it's important as well when you implement, and maybe you can tip in on this one, but it's also just not to say, I've done this, right? I have, it's like the we to make sure that everybody is included in the change.
Yeah, there's nothing that happens in our warehouse when it comes to continuous improvement where it's one person making it happen.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Oh.
It could be system changes, layout changes,
Yeah.
process changes. There's always multiple people involved. Um, and then there's actually the change management because, there's some people that kind of get used to doing it a certain way and don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
things to change.
Yes.
But hopefully if their peers are involved in the change, they'll help encourage them, and you just kind of move people through, and you just kind of explain, hey, this is the change we're making. Here's what we expect to happen from this.
Yeah.
You know, and even with that, so you're not just throwing it at them, and you, if nothing else, you just kind of say, this is what we're thinking about. Do you think that would help?
Yeah.
Do you think that would work also?
Yeah.
Um, and it's going to be them that's doing the work ultimately.
Yeah. No, it's the whole inclusive, right? So I
Mhm.
want to ask you about with automation and technology integration. How has that impacted? Because you just said as well, right? It can be a new process, and it could be the automation. So how big of an impact has that been on productivity at Mouser, or maybe just like working together as a team?
Um, I mean, I can't imagine that what we would have accomplished without automation.
Yeah.
Um, we have the largest installation of the vertical lift modules in
Yeah.
the world. We have like 135 of those.
Wow.
Um, we started off with horizontal carousels that um, our parent company TTI kind of had to talk me into, and I couldn't figure out how they would really help. And
Yeah.
and so and then we got those, and then we got better ones, and then we realized that the verticals are even better than carousels. So a bunch of carousels have been thrown out for the verticals.
Yeah.
Now we have you know, multiple different kinds of automation. Um, it makes, a couple things regarding automation. I mean, part of it is productivity gains, but what we also find is not only the productivity gains, but it helps the worker. It makes them more efficient. It makes them less tired.
Yeah.
Um, and we actually see with all of those that their quality actually improves, their accuracy improves. So, and we found that with the very first thing, the first time we added carousels, just the fact that people weren't walking around so much, um, they were able to stay productive for an entire shift.
Yeah.
And when we went and studied it, we found out that most of our errors happened towards the end of the shift. And those errors were greatly reduced by the people working on the automated equipment.
Yeah. That's really good, right? And that's a good metric as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And nobody wants to make errors, right? It is
Nope.
just, yeah. And sometimes if you're just starting making an error, it's just like suddenly just Pandora box, just keep coming. um,
It's kind of like the yips. It'll start affecting your next
yeah.
shot.
Yeah, right. It's just weird how it sometimes affects. But then no, I like that. I like that view and how you analyze as well, right? Because it's back to the bottlenecks. If you're saying right to identify where something is a bottleneck, and if you're saying the errors happen at the end of a shift, then with all
Right.
the automation, that's just mind blowing. So do you have even more automation coming at Mouser?
We do. We are looking at um, quite a bit new things. We are in the process of building the inside of our new building. It is about 400,000 square feet, our addition. So we're building the inside right now.
Yeah.
We are looking at Eurosort, which is it's basically a track with chutes that will help divide workflow. So we'll have it like in receiving to deliver work to people, and also take work away and then sort it into a unique spot. So example, if something is received, it'll go to the receiver, a specific receiver. That receiver will receive it into the system, and then they'll put it back on this belt that will then take it to the chute, and that chute will be, like one zone of the warehouse. It'll all go into a tote. As the tote gets full, and then it'll take it away to a stocking zone where the parts where those parts need to go.
Yeah. Wow.
So doing that, we're also using something similar to actually pre-shipping, where it'll consolidate the orders. It's a 5-line order. We'll have, the order will be dedicated to a chute, and as various things happen, it'll end up, so the parts end up in that chute, and in, less human involvement, less chance for errors.
So a lot of things coming. So how do you stay updated with all this? That's the technology and things happening in the industry, but then also specific within operation. How do you stay up to date?
We do go to trade shows. A lot of the team, this last week, at the beginning of this week, was actually the ProMat show in Chicago, and we had a couple of our people that went up to it. So we do that. Some of it, we have partnered with an integration company, and so a lot of times they'll bring things to us that they also hear about from their manufacturer partners, the latest and greatest that they're offering. And so then you just start investigating. Then you see, maybe see it in action to one of their other customers, just to go on a little tour and see how that's implemented. What are, pitfalls, what was good about it, what was a challenge, and just really expose yourself to some of the different technologies that are out there.
Yeah, and then the whole integration. But so how do you, because again, right, you have these big innovation, if you want to say it, right, in continuous improvement. If you install more in automation, or what you just said, what are the next coming? So how do you, there has to be a balance, right, of adding it in, implement it, and get it to work and drive and processes and everything. And then you also need to have like a smooth daily operation. So how do you maintain that?
I would say that a lot of the change management is really transition management a lot of times.
Yeah.
You decide that we love our carousels and they're working well, but we think the VLMs are better. So you actually buy 2 VLMs and you start playing with it, practicing it, perfecting it. Yeah. And before you know it, you've removed a whole bunch of your carousels, and now you have 135 VLMs. And it's kind of that process. But you do have to plan the transition.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be challenging, because a lot of times, if you remove something, you have to figure out, there's something there right now. So you gotta, if there's parts there, you have to move them, find a place for it, it's like
a whole strategy on it, right?
And staged. Yes.
Yeah. It's like a whole board game. Where do you move?
It really is. I mean, you have to spend a lot of time on that kind of planning when you're doing a major automation project.
Yeah.
And it's not only the physical part of it, but then you have the system integration. How do you get your WMS to talk to it?
Yeah.
To make it really the highest potential.
Yeah. I'm still amazed, right? Because every time you add something, even, it's like the software, everything has to communicate, everything has to flow. There's so many things, and you don't want anything just to break, because then now we have a new bottleneck. No.
Breaking is bad. We don't
breaking
like that
is
word.
Bad. Yeah. But it happens, right? It's not,
never once. Never once.
What about key leadership qualities? Because you just said with the change management, right? What kind of, if you have to look at leadership skills or the qualities you're looking for within your team, what, if you can mention a few, what will that be?
Well, I think first, they do have to be open to change. At Mauser, they need to be really open to um, almost constant change, and also it's very rapid.
Yeah.
Because we're not the type to spend a lot of time analyzing. I mean, obviously we do some analysis and we figure it out.
Yeah.
But then it's more of a, hey, let's go ahead and buy it. Let's try it, see if it works. And if it works, then we'll go all in.
There's the hands-on experience, right?
Yeah.
Leaving the road, doing it. And then if you're seeing it works, right, then you can actually scale from there.
That's right. And part of it is, and there's been some things that, don't work. They sound good in theory and you do it and you start playing with it and you can't get it to integrate right, or it just doesn't quite fit the way you thought it would for whatever reason, and you have to be quick to say, that's not going to work after all. Put it aside and let's figure out what can make it better. Is there something better that can, fix the problem we were trying to fix?
Yeah. I like that. It seems like, because now you're like, I know you guys are human, because you sometimes you do have to say it didn't work. let's reflect, do something else, and make it even better, right? So.
I really think it only happened once in 30 years. No.
Okay, good. But you did share it. No, that's
no. I'm sure it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Back in the days. No.
Yeah, back in the days.
Back in the days. No. Okay. What about, so I want to get a little more personal to you. How do you know if you are a good leader? Tough one. I know.
Well, I mean, I can simplify it in many ways. Do you have followers?
Yeah.
If you have followers, then you are a leader. It's not a title. We have certain hourly employees. We know who are the leaders. They have influence. They impact the operation. And it continues to happen at the various levels. But really, are you able to execute change and make things better? And you have different types of leaders. Some of our leaders are really the analytical, very process-oriented people.
Yeah.
Some of our other leaders are definitely more of the charismatic leader. And, they pump the people up and they get them all excited and, razzed up. And, here at Mauser, we purposely try to have a mix of both those types.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you're still, the work is done by the people, even with all the automation and everything.
Yeah.
And it's important for the people, the supervisors, managers on the floor, to have a meaningful relationship with their staff, and to support them so that they're able to accomplish their job. Because again, they're the ones doing the job.
Yeah.
The leaders are there to help them move along. But you do need some of the people in a complex environment, like running a warehouse. You do need some of those people that are more analytical, process oriented. But you really need both types to move the organization forward.
Yeah. I like that. I like it that it's actually a mix of that different types of leaders. Yeah. And I think we all, if we reflect, right, as well, you always can remember You've been different places. I've been different places. You've been many years at Mauser, but still, I'm sure your team has changed. But you always remember certain people, right? Because they actually made an impact of how they were as performing as a leader, or how they actually just made you feel. So it's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Pete, I have the last question for you. So it's like,
Uh-oh.
oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's like, I want you to reflect on your career, right? And then look back. And I want to say, if you could give yourself an advice, and let's just go 20 years back, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
I think when I look back, I think when I first became a leader, I kind of wanted to um, have control over everything and try to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And I really realized, as I got away from that and started depending on others, finding the right people to be with. But as you mature in your career, you realize that you need these different voices and you need help, because the job, you realize you can't do it all. I remember we were working on a big building a project, and I finally came to my boss at the time, and I basically said, I need help.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, I wondered when you were going to ask.
I love it.
And I'll still remember, I obviously I still remember that. I think that was in about 2001 or 2002.
Yeah.
2001, I think, when that conversation took place. When I realized I needed help, I was at the time I was the supervisor over one small department, but we were getting ready to plan a big move.
Yeah.
And and I was just getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so, but the whole idea of really realizing when you need help, ask for help, but also you don't realize how much ability the other people have. And if you can really tap into that, not depend on yourself, but really get a team, and the end result is so much better. You start involving more voices, you get a better result.
Yeah. I like it. I love it. I think it's so important to make sure that you cannot do everything yourself, right?
No.
Yeah. It's just, it's back to the people, it's back to the team, it's back to a company culture as well. So
Absolutely.
I think you had a good boss back then, waiting for you to come and
Yeah.
say it and ask it. No, because that's a realization, right? As well, that now
Yep.
you are ready, right?
Yep.
And sitting there instead of
Absolutely.
somebody's telling you should do this, right? So
Mhm.
I love it. Amazing chat today, or interview here, right, Pete? I really enjoyed it. I like the whole continuous improvement. I love that taking it in small steps. I think it's easier when you're on the other side and you look back and you're like, oh my God, that was a complex task or project or implementation of automation. But take it in smaller steps is important. And then I also like what you said, that it's you have different types of leaders. And you need to mix both leaders within your organization, because if you only had one type, oh my God, what kind of
That's
company
right.
would that be, right?
Yeah, it'd be scary. No.
Yeah, that would be scary. Yeah, right. And then it's I think the end. What I want to say at the end here is all about the people. Nothing happens if you don't have great people. So
No, that is definitely true.
yeah,
And we have a lot of great people at Mauser. As we've grown from, I think there's about 400 people at Mauser when I started, and we're now about 4,000 people globally.
yeah. Wow.
It's been a truly fun journey. And I am kind of unusual in this industry that I basically have been with Mauser for my whole electronics career.
Yeah.
Did some stuff before that, but it's been very exciting. But to be a part, of the industry, the electronics component industry, and Mauser specifically, has been very rewarding
Yeah.
and very enjoyable.
Oh, that's good. That's even better, right? And I think you're a gold mine, right? With that many years of experience, and when you actually said that, you didn't think that it changed so much when you're looking at the whole operation. I'm like, come on, you're like too humble here. So no. So thank you so much for being on the show today. I really enjoyed it.
I did too. Thanks so much, Sannah.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership in Manufacturing podcast. I love that you're listening. Please find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, and be sure to subscribe and rate us. Also, follow our LinkedIn page and Instagram, and check out leadershipinmanufacturing.com for previous episodes, blog posts, and our newsletter. So let's continue this journey together to become better leaders in the electronics industry. Remember, stay curious, keep learning. See you next time.